Good evening, it's Wednesday the 9th of February. Beautiful sunshine coming in the window here on Main Street in Milford, and that's one of the joys of living on the Main Street. We seem to get sunshine where nobody else gets it.
24/7.
But I'm joined today, this is John McGee here, with Eamon McFadden and Declan Kerr, and you're welcome to the show. A number of things we want to discuss before we move on to the Tribune. New York and New Zealand ministers resume exodus for St. Patrick's Day. There's 32 of them between senior ministers and various other people. And they're heading off all around the world. I don't see them going to North Korea or places like that. They're not going to the Ukraine this year either. Maybe they're just not quite ready for that kind of thing. But what do you think generally of the idea of ministers heading off at huge public expense? Let's quite clearly state. And this has been going on since the year Dot.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, since the year that Dot Tuberty. In fact, she's an aunt of Ryan Tuberty's.
Okay.
And she was posted in Washington, and she had this wonderful idea of giving a pot of shamrocks to the president, and that was where it all started.
Right.
I think that's 46 or 47 years ago.
And it has continued unabated apart from COVID.
Yeah, it has continued unabated apart from COVID. Leo Varadkar was the last one there in 2020 when he spoke at 5 o'clock in the morning, American time, from the steps of one of the main buildings. It wasn't the White House now, to announce that we were going to be locked down.
Right.
But are we getting any real value out of that, given the fact that we have consulates and embassies, maybe 88
diplomats
all over the world, whose one of their jobs is to sell Ireland and meet delegations that they can point in Ireland's direction? What about your view on that, Eamon? Do you agree with it, disagree with it, or just you don't give to blind flying fiddles?
That's maybe like a lot of people now, just after 2 years of lockdown, they might be glad to just get anywhere, because last year you could hardly go from Roscommon to Creasla to go to anything. Does it raise the profile? I suppose there's a certain amount of them that does. The one that whoever gets to hand the bowl of shamrocks to the American president does. I don't know if someone who goes to Belgium or Croatia or anywhere else gets the same.
You're going to all kinds of places like Argentina. What did they ever do to deserve that? But we're going to Belgium, we're going to Portugal, France. These are kind of the Lebanon, UAE,
32,
Australia, New Zealand,
32 countries.
Italy, Greece, Croatia, Romania, Slovenia, Czech Republic, Poland, Sweden, Finland, and then you have New York for Eamon Ryan. Charlie McConnell is heading where?
He going to Canada?
He's going to Canada. Yeah. And
they're a bit of a raffle to see
who goes going to London and Washington, and Leo Varadkar is going to Colombia and Chile.
We're just back to pre-COVID now, just in terms of the arguments for and against going, and I suppose there's still a lot of the general public would be very sceptical of the value that's got out of these trips, whereas you have the government and all promoting the other side that is promoting the country and business and all that sort of stuff.
But you see, the lame duck excuse, and I listened to it already today, that's trotted out, the generic excuse, if it wasn't for such and such a delegation from Donegal that went to Boston and met a certain man in a certain room, and 2 hours later they agreed to locate 100 jobs to Donegal or something like that. You'll hear that's going on out. They've made this a sort of a standby excuse.
Yeah.
I can't see the justification in sending all those people out there, given that we have 69 embassies and 106 other facilities around the world. What are they all doing? Yeah. What are all the diplomats doing? Are they not selling Ireland?
And I'll tell you, any company worth its salt will know fine well Ireland's tax situation. If they're relocating, they won't need someone to come along and hand a bowl of shamrocks over to let them know that. Yeah. So there's that as well.
But see, like, we're now in a situation that we don't want business because we can't take these data centers because we have such a ropey power supply, and we're probably losing a huge volume of money out of that. And anyway, I have never agreed with this whole nonsense of, because like every other country in the world has a national day, even North Korea, to honour their great leader and their own foundations. Wales, England, Scotland, all France, Germany, Spain, you name it. Everybody has a national day.
Yeah,
and
King's
everybody,
Day in Holland.
the whole Politburo of every nation stays at home, and they're seen on platforms. You imagine in North Korea, of every one of the 100,000 military that's needed, if there's one missing, they'll probably face instant expulsion from the party.
Well, maybe they could go over there. I think or two, but I think about military presence now with their own situation.
And these
Following the
32 trips is contributing to the global warming, isn't it?
There's a big carbon footprint there as well, as well as a financial one.
Probably not on the plane Eamon Ryan's travelling on. He's probably travelling very light.
Maybe rowing thing.
Somebody said he was going to row.
The good news is that Social Protection Minister Heather Humphreys and Foreign Affairs Minister Simon Coveney are the only cabinet ministers to miss out. And Coveney is going to be the minister on call to attend engagements if anything untoward happens. And then there's another Minister of State called Malcolm Noonan. He's not going to be travelling, but this is now going to become another regular feature of the media and everywhere else. And no matter how the government tries to spin it, we're sending delegations representing the world of business, representing the world of education and everything else out across the globe every week of the year. So it's very hard to see past the fact that this is just another shindig, you know.
Will they be able to bring back 40,000 hospitality workers with them? Would there be any chance?
Oh, they will lie. Just leave it up to Leo Varadkar and the boys. Like, they'll promise it anyway. They're going to places that there might not be a lot of hospitality workers available. In places like the United Arab Emirates and Spain and Portugal at this time of the year. Minister of State Robert Troy, he's going to India. Hildegard Norton, she's going to Australia and New Zealand, and I wish her well on that trip because she deserves it. She's a junior minister for agriculture, is she? No, she's not. Not sure.
Not sure, no.
No, Pippa Hackett is one of them. But anyway, we'll take a look at inflation while we still can afford it, because you can't blame the government for inflation. You definitely can't blame them. But what you can blame them for is not confronting it and doing something positive for the people. Because handing out a few brickbats here and there by way of another €100 on top of the 100 that they've given us is not going to resolve the crisis. Given that there's a whole raft of price increases this week again from foodstuffs like milk and stuff. Everything's going up in price.
I heard someone was telling me last week then that about the animal feeds, that they were, I don't know what it was per tonne, but they were paying something like 320-ish per tonne. Maybe that's not the correct quantity, but he said the same quantity now costs over almost 850. That's way more than double, and that's on animal feeds alone. So you can see where the knock-on comes from if that's the cost of production, like. And something as basic as food.
And there's no comprehensive plan apart from one or two little things like these €100 subventions.
Yeah, the subventions. I mean, that's not going to resolve the problem, because I know that Taoiseach has said today that it's going to cover those who are working and along with those who are on social welfare, because the same costs affect everybody else. There's many people working who are on very low incomes when they have their taxes paid and when they have their mortgages paid. So the government doesn't really have a specific plan. They're coming up with something on Thursday, but it's still not finalised, because it's going to be very hard to confront this, because they're going to have to meet about once a month now with the rate of inflation. I mean, home heating oil this week on average, give or take, it's in and around that €900 per 1,000 litres. And it's only a matter of time before it is 1,000 litres, that's €1 a litre. Petrol's going to go likewise. And I don't see that we can do much about it, except that the government can borrow. They can't do very much about excise duty, not excise duty, but VAT on fuels, because the EU has a derogation in place there. Fuels across the EU, there's an agreement that they're charged at 21% on VAT. Now we have a derogation to reduce it down to, like, we're paying 13.5%. Okay, it adds more 33 cents at the moment to the litre. But if the government tries to tamper with that, the EU will impose the 21% rate, and there we're stuck with it. So we have to find other methods. Are there any other elements that they can interfere with? There is also a 2% levy on a reserve fuel fund. We've been paying this forever and a day, and I'm not quite certain. Reserve fuel fund. That could be scrapped. It's not much of a help, but as things continue to rise, every penny is going to count. But the government has been caught without a plan or a policy, or indeed a way forward out of this, other than to come up with, first of all, it was €100 to the utility that you were paying your ESB bill to. Then they took the VAT of it. Now they're talking about adding another 100 onto it. You know, these are all small stopgap measures that's going to do nothing to stop the fire and the huge cost of inflation, because inflation is going to spread right across the universe, because it's not unique to Ireland.
Yeah, it's global.
It's just that we don't seem to have any comprehensive plan, or we haven't seen through how we can handle or deal with that.
Yeah, that seemed to be very clear at the weekend there. But I was watching the weekend politics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, like, it's incredible how little that they've done about it.
Yeah.
But then they're talking, you know, they're talking pie in the sky here and a lot of things like retrofitting, no matter what you say about it. It's going to be at a cost that we can't afford. I can't imagine who can afford deep retrofitting that could cost 60 to 80,000.
Yeah.
The government's going to make up half that cost. I don't know if the government fund that's coming from the EU anyway. I don't know if it's going to be capped at 25,000 or it's going to go on upwards.
Yeah, I think the upper end is a low interest loan rather than kind of that match funding. But as you say, it comes at who wants to go more into debt to kind of...
Who can afford a low interest loan?
Yeah.
You know.
And then
more debt to save money is kind of...
And then the whole inflation side of it then, in terms of the costs of doing the works. You know, will that all be...
You'll be back to the whole issue about who's going to do this if people said that there was an uptake, you know.
Yeah.
I know they're quite a high target with that.
I heard one installer, well-known installer in Donegal, up and in a show on radio this morning, saying that the 50,000 probably would be too tight at this point.
Yeah.
And he knows what he's talking about, because he's been doing it quite successfully for a number of years. So when you hear that, I mean, that's today's price. What will next week's price, next month's price be?
Yeah,
Projection
is for the medium term anyway. They're not chatting any short term.
No, definitely not.
But do we need deep retrofitting?
It's a tricky one to.
I mean, what is the cost of running a system that has this special pumping system? You know, what's the electrical cost like as we now stand? What would it add to your bill per week to have your heating done through an electric pumping system, rather than what we now have, this through
an oil system?
Through an oil system.
Well, you'd be paying significantly less for the electricity, but it's the cost of the retrofit.
Yeah, but
the cost is the big part of it. Like.
When you say significantly less, what kind of figures are you chatting about here? I suppose there's no one cap fits everybody's house.
It depends, because it's how much people invest in, say, in terms. There's no point in you putting in an expensive, say, geothermal system if you don't have a well insulated house. So all of a sudden you're pumping up heat to lose it all. So it goes hand in hand with like the retrofit. I think from what I could see was the majority was to actually try and improve things like your BER rating, your energy rating, so you can keep your heat within your house. I
mean, they're talking about deep retrofitting, which includes doors and windows and exterior insulating your walls. I mean, you imagine the cost of that.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing walls that were done insulated numbers of years ago now being replaced again, because the climate is not quite ideal to it. And if any damp gets in behind that stuff, you're in bother.
Yeah, the longevity of it isn't.
The longevity is poor. But I mean, is it realistic at this point to be talking about this, something that we really can't afford? Like,
well, certainly there's no two ways about it. There's no quick fix to these technologies. It is a longer game in terms of whatever saving will be well down the line.
But the question I would ask you, is there going to be any saving? Given that you're going to have to take out a substantial loan, you have to factor everything into this here.
Yeah.
Say you're left with a 40, 50,000 retrofit, and you get the half of that. You're still to go for about 25 grand, but it looks as if 25 grand would probably not look at that. So if you look at it, on average, say at 35 around, or a ballpark figure of 35 grand. I mean, how are you going to pay that back?
Well, as I say,
you have so many families now paying mortgages. They're paying private health insurance because they have to.
Yeah.
Because the health system is just no longer fit for purpose. Families don't have too many pounds left in their pockets at the end of the week.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But realistically, I would love to see that as a reality. But I think it's too unrealistic.
Yeah, I think in retrofit particularly, because there's a huge extra cost to retrofit as opposed to say if you're building a new house.
Well, we're going to move on because we're well through the programme and we haven't even started. Irish water charges. Declan, the council meeting yesterday had a look at this year.
Came up at the council meeting yesterday. Donald Mandy Kelly was talking about a particular estate in Letterkenny, but he mentioned a case of a young man who is building a house, and the cost to him of taking the water connection from the road up through a field to the house, he was given a figure of €60,000. And obviously, there's, in terms of the council themselves and councillors, they're up in arms with Irish Water in terms of representations and making queries and complaints and not getting anywhere with lots of those.
But see, Declan, where does the council stand in discussing issues about Irish Water no more than about sort of the ESB as a public utility?
Every query now a councillor brings into the council, it's referred on to Irish Water. It's not a council.
But then where's the point in bringing that query into the council?
Yeah.
It'd be far better to come to the papers and highlight it as we're doing there today. And it's quite a good story. And fair play to Donald Mandy for taking that on board.
Yeah.
But I mean, where is he any further forward today than he was yesterday?
None.
Because obviously the council doesn't have a specific role anymore.
No.
Irish Water is a standalone utility, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
So far as that's concerned.
And there's a service level agreement between the council and Irish Water in relation to.
I suppose that relationship where the council actually owned and ran the water service for generations, it's still there to be recognised. But Irish Water doesn't have to listen to the local authorities, and obviously doesn't.
That's very clear, because there have been numerous attempts to have face-to-face meetings.
That's a long run against you in the council.
That hasn't happened. Not likely happen. They're writing to them again, but it'll probably.
It's good to get it raised and get it aired, but you need to see at the end of that meeting, have we made any real progress here? Or I think, as Kieran Brogan says, we could be talking about this till bedtime.
Yeah.
And it's this has come up on a regular basis, and the government needs to have a look at how that can be addressed insofar as that deficit is there for local authorities.
There is a utilities regulator.
There is, yeah.
That was brought up at the meeting yesterday, and it would seem clear that probably that avenue hasn't been used, or is used very little in terms of registering complaints, which would probably have to be.
Anyway, we're going to move on rather quickly, because we're looking at the Black Moss Road Families Left in Limbo, and I went out and done this picture of a bridge out at Drumhalla that has been closed now for 4 weeks on Friday, and it looks as if it's going to be closed for another 4 or 5 or 6. And this is a community of about 7 townlands, there are 50 households. It's a remote area, and this bridge is causing the closure of the bridge is causing the greatest inconvenience. Farmers making detours, schools, the church at Arthurlin, cut off from that, and it has made an isolated community, much more isolated in the depth of winter time. And Ian McGarvey has taken up the cudgels on their behalf, and he raised it at yesterday's meeting, and he got some kind of a response.
Yeah, that there's a design completed for construction, and it's hoped maybe within the next month that work would start on that, or I don't know how to start or complete it, but anyway, that was the response.
But there's no way that a community of that kind, I was just out driving around those roads yesterday, and there's small wee roads, and there's bridges everywhere, and there's water running everywhere. It's a spectacularly beautiful place, high up above Rathmullen, looking out across in the Shone. There's no way a community should be left inconvenienced to that effect and to that extent for so long.
Yeah, and
I think the council will just have to look at that, and we need to understand how this road come to be closed without any consultation, no matter who I talked to in the community. Didn't know about it until they read it on some website, or somebody phoned them to say what road was closed in Fanet, because it was put out as a small road in Fanet. But anyway, that's the story out there on the Black Moss Road, and we're going to go to you, Eamon, for a quick look in on Dunfanaghy.
Dunfanaghy, it's a new project underway now to try and design a new future for Dunfanaghy. It's a programme being run by the DLDC, and it's effectively trying to get all the different groups and individuals within Dunfanaghy to work together, between sporting, community groups and that type of thing. And they're going to implement a new form of design thinking. So it's a community-led project run by Simon Canning of the DLDC.
Very good.
And that's the way with that there. So that's due to get underway in the next while. It's the one that's working 17 places around the county now. So it's called, if anybody wants to check it out, it's at innovating.ie, and they can sign up and register there. So it runs on a weekly basis for about 10 weeks. Dunfanaghy, a shared vision is the name of it. So
thanks very much, Eamon. Our lead story, as expected, pays tribute to the life and times of a dear friend, Martin Ridge, who passed away at the Donegal Hospice on last Saturday evening. And the show headline reads, Abuse Victims Mourn Death of Loyal Friend. And what caught our attention to a great extent yesterday was that very inspiring homily by the I'm not sure what parish the chief celebrant, Father Brian O'Farry, is serving in, but he had beautiful bilingual coverage of that. It was very, very powerful eloquent. And very eloquent. And he just briefly, well, I just covered briefly on the front page. We have a lot of his comments elsewhere, but he's talking about Martin. He's talking about his life, faith, perseverance, hope, love, respect, and friendship, a deep and steady moral compass, coupled with a strong work ethic for justice and truthfulness, for empowerment of victims of sexual abuse, and accountability for what is true and right, especially with regards to those who have suffered such criminal acts like lava na heglische Catholic. And that's it for this week. But folks, thanks for listening. Talk next week.